When my son shoved me to give my seat at the table to his wife's mother, I never imagined that I would change his entire life in the next 24 hours. I was just a 64-year-old mother who had built a business empire from scratch. But that Christmas Eve, I decided it was time to teach him a lesson about respect and consequences. When Michael woke up the next day, 47 missed calls were waiting for him, and his life would never be the same again. But before we continue, make sure you are already subscribed to the channel Grandma's Revenge Tales and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories reach. My name is Emily, and for almost 4 decades I built the largest construction company in our city from the ground up. When my husband Robert passed away 6 years ago, my only son, Michael, became the most important person in my life. That was what I thought, at least until that terrible Christmas dinner. The afternoon of the 24th began with so much promise. I arrived at Michael's house carrying gifts carefully chosen for my beloved grandkids, Matthew, who is 15, and Lily, who is 12. In my bag was a bottle of special vintage wine that cost over $1,000, saved to celebrate with the family. The house was beautifully decorated. Golden lights illuminated every corner, and the aroma of roast turkey filled the air. Everything seemed perfect. "Grandma!" my grandkids shouted, running toward me. Matthew was already taller than me, and Lily still hung around my neck like she did when she was little. Those sincere hugs were the only moments of true happiness I would experience that night. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, welcomed me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I always felt something artificial about her, as if every word or gesture was carefully measured. "It is so good that you arrived early, Emily." Michael appeared from the kitchen, but his greeting was strangely mechanical. "Hi, Mom. Leave your coat there." I noticed something different in the atmosphere, a palpable tension that I couldn't identify. The table was set for 8 people, but there were only 6 of us. "Are we expecting someone else?" I asked, observing the extra spots. "Yes, my parents are arriving any moment," Jessica replied with that same rehearsed smile. She was referring to Linda and Richard Vance, a couple I knew well from business circles. Richard, in particular, had always silently competed with me in the business world. When the couple arrived, Michael transformed completely. His posture changed and his tone of voice altered, becoming excessively attentive. "Mrs. Linda, Mr. Richard, what a pleasure to have you here. Please come in." It seemed strange to me, but I decided not to comment. After all, it was Christmas, and I wanted to enjoy time with my family. We sat at the table, and I took my usual place at the head, next to Michael. That was where I always sat since Robert passed away, and the celebrations had moved to my son's house. But when Richard approached the table, I realized that Michael was looking at me with an expression I will never forget. Cold, calculating, indifferent. "Mom, I need you to change seats." I was confused. "Excuse me?" "This seat is for Mr. Richard. He is our guest of honor." I felt as if I had been slapped. "Michael, I have always sat here. This is my place in the family." The tension was almost palpable. Jessica looked at the floor, visibly uncomfortable. The kids stopped talking. Richard remained standing, observing the scene with a mix of discomfort and something else I couldn't identify. "Mom, don't make this difficult. Get up, please. I don't understand, Michael. What is happening?" It was then that it happened. Michael stepped closer, put his hands on my shoulders, and shoved me with enough force that I lost my balance. My 64-year-old body couldn't withstand the impulse, and I fell heavily to the floor in front of everyone. The silence that followed was deafening. The kids screamed my name. Jessica covered her mouth with her hands. Linda looked horrified. Richard remained motionless, but in his eyes, I saw something that froze my blood. Satisfaction. "This place is for Jessica's father. Get out." Michael's voice sounded unrecognizable. From the floor, humiliated and in pain, something broke inside me. Not just my dignity, but something much deeper. The image I had of my son, the unconditional love I felt for him, crumbled like a house of cards. Matthew and Lily helped me up. Their faces reflected confusion and pain. "Are you okay, Grandma?" Lily asked with tears in her eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I lied, caressing her hair, but inside a storm was beginning to form. Michael had already taken his seat at the table as if nothing had happened. Richard occupied my chair without saying a word. Jessica served dinner with nervous movements, avoiding my gaze. I sat in a side chair like a second-class guest in what used to be my own family. Throughout dinner, I watched how Michael addressed Richard with a respect he had never shown me. I watched how Jessica hung on every word from her parents. I watched how my grandkids looked at me with sadness, not understanding why their father had humiliated their grandmother. And as I watched, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. The dinner passed in an atmosphere as thick as smoke. Every bite tasted like betrayal. Every laugh between Michael and Richard pierced my soul like daggers. My grandkids tried to fill the silence with innocent comments about school, but even they realized that something fundamental had changed in our family. "Matthew was selected for the school math team," I commented, trying to recover some normality. "Oh, really?" Michael replied without even looking at me, concentrated on pouring more wine for Richard. "Is the meat to your liking, Mr. Richard?" It was as if I had become invisible. For 42 years, I raised this man. I taught him values and principles. I gave him everything I had and much more. And now he treated me like an uncomfortable stranger at his own table. When we finally finished dinner, I asked for permission discreetly. "I'm going to the restroom for a moment." No one answered. No one even looked up from their cognac glasses and their business conversations in which I, the woman who had built the family company from nothing, was not included. I walked toward the bathroom with slow steps, but my mind was racing at a dizzying speed. Once inside, I locked the door and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me had red eyes, not from tears, but from a cold rage that was beginning to crystallize into pure determination. I took my cell phone and started dialing numbers I knew by heart. The first call was to Edward, my personal lawyer for over 20 years. "Emily? It is Christmas Eve. What happened?" "Edward, I need you to prepare documents first thing tomorrow to revoke all the powers Michael has in the company. All of them, without exception." There was a long pause. Edward knew the structure of my businesses perfectly. "Emily, are you sure?" "That would mean—" "I know exactly what it means. I also want you to cancel all the guarantees I have signed in his name. The house, the car, the corporate cards, everything. What happened? My son just showed me who he really is, and I am going to show him who I am." The second call was to Mary, my accountant and CFO. She also knew every financial movement of the family. "Mary, sorry to bother you on this date. I need you to freeze all joint accounts with Michael tomorrow morning. Suspend his salary and executive benefits. Is there a legal problem, Mrs. Emily?" "No, Mary. I am just taking back control of what belongs to me." The third call was the most important. I dialed the number of David, my right-hand man at the company, a loyal man who had been with me since the beginning. "David, forgive the hour. Could you go to the office early tomorrow? I need you to remove all of Michael's personal belongings from his office." "Are you firing him? He is no longer CEO. You will assume the position starting tomorrow. Prepare an immediate termination letter. Cause: loss of trust." "Understood, Mrs. Emily. Anything else?" "Yes." "Put a note on his desk that says, 'This office is not for you.' I want him to understand the message perfectly." After the calls, I stayed a few more minutes in the bathroom, mentally organizing every move I would make. It wasn't revenge I was looking for. It was justice. For decades, I built a business empire, sacrificed personal time, and worked 18 hours a day to give my family a comfortable life. And my own son had just proven that all that effort wasn't even worth basic respect. I returned to the living room with a serene smile that hid the storm unleashing inside me. The conversation continued without me, as if I had never existed. "The European markets are very volatile," Richard commented, while gesturing with his cognac glass. "Exactly." Michael agreed with enthusiasm. That is why we believe a merger between our companies would be beneficial. Those words hit me like lightning. A merger. They were planning to merge my company, my life's work, with Richard's without even consulting me. Merger? I asked with a controlled voice. Michael looked at me as if he had forgotten I was still there. Oh yes, Mom. Richard and I have been discussing expansion possibilities. Well, technically, I am the CEO, he replied with an arrogant smile I had never seen on his face before. Technically, I repeated slowly, savoring every syllable. I see, Richard intervened with his calm and calculating voice. Emily, do you understand that modern businesses require fresh approaches? Michael has innovative ideas. I am sure he does, I replied, maintaining my external composure while internally noting every word for the future reckoning. The kids had already gone up to their rooms after dessert, oblivious to the drama unfolding between the adults. Jessica was clearing the plates with mechanical movements, clearly uncomfortable, but without daring to intervene in the conversation. I think it is time for me to go, I announced finally, rising from the side chair where I had been relegated. Sure, Mom. Sleep well, Michael replied without looking up from his cigar. He didn't even bother to walk me to the door. It was Matthew who ran down the stairs when he heard I was leaving. Are you leaving already, Grandma? I thought you would stay later, like always. No, sweetheart. Tonight I have important things to do. Are you mad about what happened? My grandson's question pierced my heart. Even a teenager had realized the injustice of the situation. I am not mad, Matthew. I am disappointed. But sometimes disappointments teach us important truths. I don't understand. You will understand soon, son. I love you very much. Remember that always. I left that house feeling strangely liberated. The cold December air filled my lungs as I walked toward my car. In the driver's seat before starting the engine, I grabbed my phone again. I had one last call to make. Mrs. Davis, this is Emily Miller. Excuse the bother on Christmas Eve, but I need to modify my will tomorrow. Yes, it is urgent, very urgent. As I drove home, a smile formed on my face for the first time all night. Michael had played his cards believing he had control over the situation, but he had forgotten a fundamental detail. I was the one who had built the game board, and tomorrow he would discover the real rules. I got home close to midnight, but sleep was the last thing on my mind. While the rest of the city celebrated Christmas, I prepared for the most important battle of my life. I turned on all the lights in my office and spread all the legal documents I had accumulated over 4 decades of work on the oak table. The first task was to meticulously review the partnership contracts. I needed to confirm something I suspected. Michael never had a real equity stake in the company. He was CEO by my designation, not by acquired right. All his authority depended on my will, and that will had just changed radically. While I flipped through folders and files, my phone rang. It was Mary, my accountant. Mrs. Emily, I have been reviewing the accounts since we spoke. There is something you need to know urgently. Tell me, Mary, Michael has been using company guarantees for personal expenses much larger than we imagined. The mansion where he lives has a mortgage of $800,000 guaranteed by you. The sports car, $150,000. The corporate credit cards. Mrs. Emily, he owes over $300,000 in personal purchases. The information hit me like a slab of concrete. Is he delinquent on any payment? Several. Without your guarantees, he will be foreclosed on immediately. The banks will start foreclosure procedures tomorrow. Perfect. Cancel all guarantees at dawn. Are you sure? That will ruin his financial situation. Mary, my son just ruined something much more valuable. Our relationship. Now he will learn about consequences. After hanging up, I kept reviewing documents until I found what I was looking for. Michael's employment contracts. My company, Miller Construction, paid him a salary of $12,000 a month, plus benefits that included a company car, private health insurance, expense accounts, and a share in annual profits. All that would disappear in a few hours. At 3 in the morning, I called David. Boss, I couldn't sleep thinking about what you asked me. Do you really want to do this? David, do you trust my judgment after all these years? Of course, Mrs. Emily. You took me out of poverty and gave me opportunities I never dreamed of. Then trust me now. Michael crossed a line of no return. Go to the office early, remove his personal belongings, and put that note exactly as I told you. What if he arrives while I'm doing it? Even better. I want him to feel what it is like when someone takes your place. At 4 a.m, I reviewed the financial statements of the last 5 years. What I discovered filled me with rage and disappointment. Michael had been diverting small sums to personal accounts for years. Nothing illegal, but ethically reprehensible. He had used company contacts to get private contracts. He had charged commissions for recommending suppliers without informing me. My son had not only disrespected me that night, he had betrayed my trust systematically for years. At 5 a.m, I called Edward. Emily, I have been preparing the documents you requested, but I must warn you. This will have immediate legal consequences. Michael could sue you for wrongful termination. Edward, I have proof of embezzlement, misuse of corporate resources, and undeclared conflicts of interest. Do you think he will want to go to trial? I understand. The documents will be ready at 8 sharp. Perfect. Also, prepare the papers to transfer ownership of the mansion on Central Avenue, which is in his name. It was a wedding gift, but it is registered as a family loan. I want it back. The mansion where he currently lives. Exactly. Let him learn to pay rent like any normal person. At 6 a.m, while I made coffee, I received a message from Lily. Grandma, Dad is very nervous. He stayed on the phone all night. Is everything okay? I replied. Everything will be fine, sweetheart. Your grandma loves you very much. At 7 a.m, the moment arrived to make the most satisfying call of the entire operation. National Bank, this is Emily Miller speaking. I need to immediately cancel all guarantees I have signed in the name of Michael Miller. Yes, all of them. Mortgage, loans, cards, everything. Mrs. Miller, that will mean payments will be executed immediately against the principal debtor. I know perfectly well. Proceed. Very well. The cancellation documents will be processed in an hour. Should I inform Mr. Miller? It is not necessary. He will find out very soon. At 8 a.m, Edward arrived at my house with all the documents prepared. I signed every paper with iron determination. Cancellation of executive powers, revocation of banking authority, immediate cessation of director functions, recovery of assets given as a family loan. Emily, once you sign this, there is no turning back. Edward, a few hours ago, my son pushed me to the floor in front of my grandkids to give my place to another man. Do you think there is a turning back? I signed the last document at 8:30 in the morning. At 9 sharp, I called David to confirm everything was ready at the office. Boss, I already removed all his things. The computer, the diplomas, even the plant he had in the window. Everything is in boxes in the storage room, and the note was placed exactly in the center of the desk, as you asked. Perfect. When he arrives, let him in normally. Don't explain anything. Let him discover the situation for himself. At 9:30, I received confirmation from Mary. Mrs. Emily, all guarantees were officially canceled. The banks will start executions starting at 10 in the morning. At 10:05, I put on my best suit. Today was not just any day. It was the day Michael Miller would discover what the word consequences really meant. I poured myself one last cup of coffee and contemplated the sunrise from my office window. After a sleepless night, I felt strangely energized. There was no trace of the sadness or pain from a few hours before, only a crystal clear clarity about what had to be done. My phone was silenced, but I could see the notifications piling up on the screen. Messages, missed calls, emails. The storm had begun. Michael was about to wake up to the worst day of his life, and I would be waiting to see his reaction when he finally understood that actions have consequences, and that underestimating his mother had been the most costly mistake of his existence. The war had begun, and I had all the weapons. Michael woke up that morning of December 25th with a strange sensation in his stomach. It wasn't the hangover from the cognac the night before, but something deeper, as if his subconscious had picked up danger signals that his conscious mind hadn't processed yet. Jessica was already awake, making breakfast for the kids with mechanical movements. The atmosphere in the house seemed tense, charged with an invisible electricity that no one mentioned, but everyone perceived. Later, David told me all the details of what happened that morning. Michael had received the first call at 10:15. "Mr. Miller, this is Sarah from Atlantic Bank. We urgently need you to contact us regarding your mortgage." "What is happening?" "My mortgage is current. Sir, the principal guarantee of your loan was canceled this morning. Without that guarantee, the loan automatically enters immediate demand." Michael felt as if he had been doused with ice water. "What guarantee? What are you talking about?" "The guarantee signed by Mrs. Emily Miller. Without that guarantee, you must settle the complete debt, or we will proceed with foreclosure." Before he could react completely, the phone rang again. "Mr. Michael Miller, Global Bank, Risk Department. Your corporate line of credit has been suspended due to cancellation of guarantees. You must present yourself immediately at our offices." He hung up and the phone rang again. "Commercial Bank. Your business credit card has been blocked." Another call. "Continental Finance. Preliminary attachment procedure on..." And another. "Mercantile Bank. Immediate execution of..." In 15 minutes, Michael received exactly 47 calls from different banking entities, insurance companies, car dealerships, and corporate suppliers. His financial world was crumbling in real time, while he stood in his kitchen, still in pajamas. Jessica watched the scene with growing horror. "What is happening, Michael? Why so many calls?" "I don't know," he mumbled, but in the back of his mind, a terrible suspicion began to form. My words from the night before resonated in his memory. Technically, I am the CEO. At 11 in the morning, he decided to go immediately to the company. He needed to understand what was happening, and, what is more important, he needed access to corporate resources to deal with this unexpected crisis. He drove his BMW through the city, not knowing it would be one of the last times he would be behind the wheel of that vehicle. The dealership had already received recovery orders for non-payment of the lease. David described to me in detail the moment Michael arrived at the Miller construction building. The security guard greeted him normally, showing no signs that anything had changed. Michael went up in the elevator to the 5th floor where his CEO office was. Upon leaving the elevator, he noticed something strange. David was in his office, sitting behind his desk, reviewing documents that clearly belonged to the executive files. "David, what are you doing in my office?" David looked up with an uncomfortable but firm expression. "Good morning, Michael. This is no longer your office." "What do you mean, it is not my office? What are you talking about?" "Read the letter that is on the desk." Michael walked over and saw, placed exactly in the center of the wooden surface, a note written by hand with my unmistakable handwriting. "This office is not for you." The words hit him like physical punches. It was the same phrase he had used the night before, but now directed at him. He felt his knees go weak. "David, this must be a joke." "It is not a joke, Michael." "Mrs. Emily named me CEO this morning. You have 5 minutes to collect your personal items in the storage room and leave the building. This is impossible. I am the CEO. I have spent years building this company together with my mother. Not anymore, Michael. The termination documents are officially filed. Causes: loss of trust and conflict of interest. Michael felt the world spinning around him. He grabbed the phone to call me, but before he could dial, David handed him a sealed envelope. "Mrs. Emily asked me to give you this." With trembling hands, Michael opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, typed on company letterhead. "Michael, the consequences of our acts sometimes arrive when we least expect them. Last night, you taught me that my place in your life no longer exists. Today, I teach you that your place in my company doesn't either. You have until noon to vacate any property that is in my name. The mansion on Central Avenue, the car, everything. Learn to live with your own resources, as you should have done years ago. Do not look for me. Do not call me. Do not try intermediaries. This decision is final and irrevocable. Your mother, who no longer recognizes you, Emily Miller. Michael read the letter 3 times before the words completely penetrated his understanding. It wasn't just the job. It was everything. His house, his car, his lifestyle, his economic security, everything had disappeared in a single morning. David, you have to help me. You have known my mother for years. This is temporary insanity. Michael, I saw what you did to her last night. Even my own wife was outraged when I told her. Mrs. Emily is the fairest woman I know, but also the most determined. When she makes a decision, there is no turning back. But I am her son. Her only son. You were her son. Last night, you decided to be something else. Michael left the corporate building like a sleepwalker. In the parking lot, he found a tow truck hooking up his BMW. The driver showed him a court order for recovery due to non-payment. Wait, there must be a mistake. There is no mistake, sir. The lease is expired and without guarantees. The vehicle will be recovered immediately. Michael had to walk to the nearest subway station, something he hadn't done in years. During the trip back home, his phone didn't stop ringing. Banks, creditors, suppliers, all demanding immediate payments. When he finally arrived at the mansion, he found Jessica crying on the sofa with a court notice in her hands. Michael, we have 24 hours to leave the house. They are going to foreclose. What? Your mother canceled all the guarantees. We owe $800,000 that we don't have. Michael let himself fall into a chair, completely defeated. In less than 12 hours, he had lost his job, his car, his house, and his economic stability. And worst of all, he had lost his mother. The words he had pronounced the night before resonated now like a curse. This place is for Jessica's father. Get out. Now he was the one who was out of everything. While my plan unfolded, I remained in my office, receiving regular updates from David, Mary, and Edward. Each new account confirmed that Michael was experiencing exactly what I had planned. The total collapse of his privileged world. That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Richard Vance. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the best of me. Emily, I hope I'm not bothering you. It depends on the reason for the call, Richard. I want to apologize for what I witnessed last night. Michael's behavior was unacceptable, and I feel partially responsible for not having intervened immediately. His voice sounded sincere, which surprised me. For years, Richard had been a silent competitor, never an ally. I appreciate the call, Richard, but you don't have to apologize. It wasn't you who shoved me. Even so, I feel terrible for having occupied your seat. I want you to know that I never imagined something like that would happen. There was a pause before he continued. Actually, Emily, there is another reason for my call. I understand that you took severe measures against Michael today. I immediately went on guard. How do you know that? The business world is small. News travels fast. What Michael did is unforgivable, but it also reveals something about his character that I hadn't perceived before. And what would that be? That he cannot be trusted. Emily, any man capable of treating his own mother that way is not someone I would like to do business with. I felt a wave of satisfaction realizing that Richard was canceling the possible merger with the company. Now just my company. I understand your position. In fact, I would like to propose something different. Instead of working with Michael, I would prefer to explore partnership possibilities directly with you. I have always admired your business vision, even when we were competing. That took me by surprise. The man my son had tried to impress at my expense was now offering me a partnership. The irony was almost poetic. It is an interesting proposal, Richard. We can discuss it after the dust settles. Of course, no rush. And Emily, it was very smart of you to maintain absolute control of the company all these years. After hanging up, I stayed thinking about this unexpected turn. Michael had sacrificed our relationship to gain Richard's approval, and now he had lost both. The consequences of his actions continued to multiply. At 3 p.m., Edward called me with new updates. Emily, the eviction notices were already delivered. Michael has 24 hours to leave the mansion. Any reaction from him? He tried to contest, but when we presented the evidence of financial embezzlement, he gave up quickly. He knows he has no way to win this legal battle. With every new piece of information, I expected to feel some remorse, some maternal hesitation, but all I felt was a strange sensation of justice. It wasn't revenge that moved me, but a deep need to establish boundaries that had never been established before. That night, I couldn't sleep, not from regret, but from the energy that still pulsed in my veins. For the first time in years, I had taken total control of my life again. I had eliminated the only person who made me feel vulnerable, the only person capable of hurting me deeply. While I contemplated the ceiling of my room, I remembered Robert, my late husband. What would he say about all this? He was always more lenient with Michael, more willing to forgive his small failures. But even Robert, with all his kindness, would never have tolerated what happened on Christmas Eve. "You did what you had to do," I could almost hear him say. "Michael needs to learn that the world doesn't revolve around him." The next day brought more news. Jessica had called her parents, begging for financial help. Linda was willing to help, but Richard surprisingly refused. "My daughter and my grandkids will always have my support," he had said. "But I will not finance the lifestyle of a man who treats his own mother that way." Richard's transformation from Michael's potential partner to my ally was fascinating. Not only was he denying help to my son, he was explicitly condemning his actions. It was as if the respect Michael tried to earn by humiliating me had turned into exactly the opposite. 3 days after the Christmas disaster, Matthew called me. His voice sounded worried, more adult than his 15 years. "Grandma, are you okay?" "I am fine, sweetheart. And you? How are things at home?" There was a significant pause. "Complicated. Mom is nervous all the time. Dad barely leaves his room. They think I don't know, but I heard an argument. We will have to move to a small apartment downtown. I felt a pang of guilt thinking about my grandkids facing the consequences of Michael's actions. They were innocent in this story. Matthew, I want you to know that my love for you and Lily has not changed at all. What happened between your father and me is an adult matter. I know, Grandma. Lily is scared, but I explained to her that you aren't mad at us. You are a very smart boy, Matthew." "Grandma, what Dad did was very bad, right?" The question was simple, but loaded with complexity. How to explain to a teenager the depth of the betrayal I had felt? "Your father hurt me a lot, Matthew. It wasn't just shoving me physically, but the disrespect that represented. When you grow up, you will understand that some actions have consequences we cannot erase. Do you think he will learn the lesson?" That was the question I asked myself. Michael had always been protected from the consequences of his acts. Since he was a child, his charm and position as an only child guaranteed him easy forgiveness for almost everything. Maybe that was precisely what had turned him into the man he was. I hope so, Matthew. Sometimes we need to lose everything to understand the value of what we had. Upon hanging up, I reflected on the unexpected wisdom my grandson demonstrated. Even at 15, he could see with clarity the basic justice of the situation. Kids often have an innate sense of right and wrong that we adults complicate with elaborate justifications. That night, I made an important decision. Although I couldn't forgive Michael, I wouldn't allow my grandkids to suffer unnecessarily for his mistakes. I called my lawyer with new instructions. "Edward, I want to establish an educational fund for Matthew and Lily, completely separate from anything related to Michael or Jessica. A fund that guarantees their education no matter what happens with their parents." "Understood, Emily. I will prepare the documents. Should I include any specific clause?" "Yes. The money can only be used for education, health, or direct welfare of the children. Michael and Jessica cannot have access to it under any circumstance. It was my way of separating the love for my grandkids from the need to establish clear boundaries with my son. I was still a grandmother, even if I didn't feel like a mother anymore. January arrived with the typical cold and stillness that follows the holidays. A week after the incident, I received news that Michael, Jessica, and the kids had moved to a small rented apartment downtown. The contrast with the mansion where they lived before couldn't be more dramatic. David kept me informed about the rumors circulating in business circles. The story of Michael Miller's fall had spread quickly, becoming a warning for other executives who underestimated the power of their corporate matriarchs. My reputation, curiously, had strengthened. I was no longer just the competent widow who had continued her husband's legacy. Now I was the relentless businesswoman who didn't tolerate disrespect, not even from her own son. Weeks turned into months, and the wound in my heart began to heal, although never completely. I dedicated myself entirely to the company, implementing projects I had postponed for years. The partnership with Richard Vance was developing surprisingly positively. Our management styles, previously competitive, revealed themselves to be complementary when aligned on common goals. In mid-March, Mary brought me information about Michael's financial situation. "Mrs. Emily, I got some data through common contacts. Michael is working as an administrative assistant at a small construction company on the other side of town. The salary is a tenth of what he earned with us." I absorbed the information in silence. A part of me felt a bitter satisfaction, but another part, the one that still held memories of the boy Michael had been, felt a pang of sadness. Does he still have financial difficulties? Considerable ones. Most banks refuse to work with him due to previous defaults. He and Jessica have sold practically everything of value they owned. And the kids? From what I know, they had to change schools. They can no longer pay the international school tuition. That information bothered me deeply. Immediately, I called Edward and instructed that the educational fund I had created for my grandkids be activated to cover their school expenses. The children shouldn't suffer for their father's mistakes. In April, I received unexpected news through Linda Vance, whom I had run into at a charity event. "Emily, I don't know if I should tell you this, but I think you have the right to know. Jessica asked for a divorce." I was genuinely surprised. Why? She said she no longer recognizes the man she married, that the financial disaster only revealed a side of Michael she cannot accept. The straw that broke the camel's back was when he sold her engagement ring to pay rent without even consulting her. The news reverberated in me in a complex way. Michael was reaping the consequences of his acts in every sphere of his life. And the kids? They will stay with Jessica, of course. Michael will have visits on weekends when he has a suitable place to receive them. I realized that the empire Michael had lost wasn't just financial or professional. It was also familial. In a single night of arrogance, he had started a domino effect that was now destroying every pillar of his previous existence. In May, when the first flowers of spring began to color the city, I received a letter. The envelope was simple, the kind you buy at any neighborhood stationery store. I recognized Michael's handwriting immediately. I hesitated before opening it. A part of me feared finding bitter accusations or manipulative pleas. Another part, the one that would never completely stop being a mother, sincerely hoped it wasn't that. "Dear Emily," the letter began without the usual mom or any family intimacy. "I know I have no right to address you, and I completely respect your decision not to want contact with me. This letter seeks neither a response nor a reconciliation. I simply need to say some things I learned during these months that changed my life forever." The formality and respectful tone surprised me. There was no trace of the arrogance I knew so well. For 42 years, I believed I deserved everything I had for being your son. Now I understand that I deserve nothing, simply for having been born with privileges. Respect is earned with actions, not with last names. Dignity is built with character, not with bank accounts. The words seemed sincere, not calculated to gain advantages. There is no excuse for what I did. Shoving you to the floor in front of my children was the most cowardly and cruel act of my life. It wasn't a mistake. It was a conscious choice to prioritize my social image over your dignity. It was pure betrayal, and I deserved exactly the consequences I received. I felt my eyes filling with tears, not of sadness, but of a strange combination of relief and recognition. Michael finally seemed to understand. I am not writing expecting forgiveness. Forgiveness is something that must be earned through years of consistent behavior, not pretty words on paper. Nor am I writing expecting you to change your decision about our relationship. I respect your choice completely and understand it is fair and necessary. The letter continued for several pages, detailing not his sufferings or losses, but his process of inner growth. He described his current job not as a humiliation, but as an education in dignity. He explained his modest apartment not as a punishment, but as a lesson in self-sufficiency. If we never speak again, I want you to know that I have become a better person thanks to the consequences you imposed, not in spite of them, but thanks to them. That is a gift more valuable than any material inheritance. You gave me the opportunity to discover my own value, separate from your achievements and your generosity. The letter ended with a simple signature. With deep respect and eternal love, your son who is finally growing up, Michael. I kept the letter in my desk and spent the rest of the day absorbing its content. It wasn't emotional manipulation disguised as regret. It was the genuine recognition of a man who was finally facing the consequences of an entire life of unquestioned privileges. That night, I took a sheet of paper and wrote a brief response. Michael, I received your letter and read it several times. I am glad to know you are okay and that you are growing as a person. That growth is exactly what I hoped for. I am not ready to resume a personal relationship and perhaps never will be, but I want you to know that I am proud of the man you are choosing to be. Follow that path, Emily. It was the most I could offer at that moment. It wasn't forgiveness, but recognition. It wasn't reconciliation, but respect. And for someone who had lost everything, maybe it was enough to continue building a new life on foundations more solid than inherited privilege. December returned, marking a full year since the night that had changed our lives forever. Christmas lights illuminated the city, bringing bittersweet memories that I tried to keep in perspective. Throughout those 12 months, I had observed Michael's transformation from a distance, mainly through sporadic accounts from my grandkids. According to Matthew, his father had changed completely. He seems calmer now, Grandma. He isn't always running after something, and he really listens to us when we talk. The company prospered under my renewed leadership, and the partnership with Richard had turned out surprisingly fruitful. We had started 3 major joint projects, expanding our operations beyond regional borders. Ironically, the merger Michael had planned behind my back ended up happening, but on very different terms and without his participation. The week before Christmas, I received an unexpected call from Jessica. Our relationship had been cordial but distant, mainly because of the kids. Emily, I hope I am not bothering you. Not at all, Jessica. How can I help you? It is about Christmas. The kids and I would very much like to invite you to have dinner with us on Christmas Eve. I hesitated, wondering if Michael would be present. As if reading my thoughts, Jessica continued, Michael won't be there. He understands his presence would be uncomfortable for you. He will spend it with the kids the next day. I was moved by the consideration. In that case, I accept with pleasure. Thank you, Emily. It means a lot to us, especially for the kids. After hanging up, I reflected on how the roles had reversed. A year ago, I was the uncomfortable guest at my own son's table. Now, he was the one stepping aside to give me space. On Christmas Eve, I drove to the small apartment where Jessica and the kids now lived. It was a modest place, but cozy, decorated with simplicity and good taste. When I arrived, Matthew and Lily ran to hug me with the same spontaneity as always, as if the abyss that opened in our family had never existed for them. The dinner was simple. very different from the opulence of the previous year, but infinitely warmer and more genuine. Jessica had prepared everything with evident care, and the kids showed me their contributions with pride. Lily had made the dessert, and Matthew the table decoration. During the meal, we talked about their daily lives, school, their dreams. At no moment was Michael mentioned directly, but his presence floated like an unplayed note in a familiar melody. When the kids retired to watch a Christmas movie, Jessica and I stayed alone in the small dining room. "Emily, there is something I need to tell you." Her serious tone put me on alert. Michael really has changed. It is not a farce or a temporary strategy. He works honestly, lives modestly, and has dedicated himself to being a better father to the kids. I nodded, not knowing quite what to answer. I know what he did is unforgivable. I myself couldn't stay married to him after seeing what he was capable of, but I think he deserves for you to know that your lesson had the desired effect. I'm glad to hear that, Jessica. I never wanted to destroy him, only for him to understand the consequences of his actions. She smiled slightly. Well, he certainly understood. Sometimes, when I see how he is now, humbler, more attentive, more genuine, I almost don't recognize the man I married. I stayed silent, absorbing her words. Did he ever mention trying a reconciliation with you again? I shook my head. Not directly. I received news from him through the kids, and we exchanged a few formal letters, but nothing more. I think he is afraid. Not of you, but of not deserving a second chance. Her words stayed with me as I drove home that night. Michael was afraid of not deserving a second chance. I myself was afraid of offering one and regretting it later. Fear, I realized, was what kept us trapped in that emotional impasse. On Christmas Day, I received a small package by mail. Inside was a handcrafted wooden box, clearly handmade, with finely carved details. Next to it, a simple card. "Merry Christmas," made with my own hands in night carpentry classes. I hope it can serve to keep your special memories. With respect, Michael. I examined the box with attention. It wasn't perfect. There were small imperfections that revealed the hand of an apprentice, but it was evidently made with care and dedication. My son, who before only valued luxury items and status, now created something with his own hands. I spent the rest of the day thinking about that symbolic gift. Michael wasn't asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. He was simply showing me in a tangible way the person he was becoming. A week later, I made a decision. I wasn't ready to completely resume our relationship, but maybe it was time for a small step. I called Matthew. "Grandma, is everything okay? Everything is fine, sweetheart. Can I talk to your father, please?" There was a surprised silence on the other end of the line, followed by noises of movement. Then Michael's hesitant voice. "Hello. Michael, this is Emily." "Mom? Emily. Did something happen?" "I received your gift. The wooden box. Oh yes, I hope you liked it. It is nothing fancy, but it is beautiful. More beautiful than anything you could have bought." Another silence. "Thank you. That means a lot to me. Michael, I was thinking, maybe we can meet someday. A coffee, perhaps, to talk." The answer took so long I thought the call had dropped. I would love that, whenever you want. How about next week, Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon at Central Cafe? I will be there. Thank you for the opportunity. Upon hanging up, I wasn't sure I had made the right decision. I wasn't ready to forgive completely, nor to forget. But maybe I was ready to see for myself the man my son had become. The following Tuesday, I arrived at the cafe a few minutes before the agreed time. I chose a discreet table at the back of the establishment and ordered an espresso to calm my nerves. Michael arrived punctually, wearing simple but clean clothes, very different from the expensive suits he used to wear. There was something different in his posture, less arrogance, more awareness. When our gazes met, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in decades, genuine humility. "Thank you for coming," he said simply, sitting in front of me. "Thank you for the invitation," I replied, maintaining the formal tone we had established in our letters. For a moment, we stayed silent, two strangers connected by blood, but separated by a December night that had changed everything. "How is your job?" I asked finally. Honest, sometimes difficult, but honest. I am learning things I should have learned a long time ago. I nodded, appreciating the simplicity of his response. "And the carpentry?" A small smile appeared on his face. "It is therapeutic. It transforms wood into something useful, just as I am trying to transform my life." Our conversation flowed slowly with care, like two explorers in unknown territory. We didn't talk about the past, nor made promises for the future. We only shared small glimpses of the present, tacitly recognizing that any reconstruction would have to begin from scratch. When we said goodbye an hour later, there were no hugs or dramatic declarations, only a silent agreement that maybe one day we could find a new type of relationship, not based on financial dependence or unfulfilled expectations, but on mutual respect and healthy boundaries. As I drove home, I reflected on the journey of the last year. I had lost a son as I knew him, but maybe I was gaining a more authentic version of him. Michael had lost everything he valued superficially, but he was finding something deeper and more lasting: personal dignity. The consequences I imposed weren't just punishment. They were an opportunity for the growth he never would have sought voluntarily. And although the road to reconciliation, if there was one, would be long and uncertain, finally I felt peace with the decisions I made that Christmas Eve, a year ago. Because sometimes, the greatest act of love is not to protect someone from consequences, but to allow them to happen so the person can finally grow beyond their own self-imposed limits. Now, if you like this story, click on the next video that appears on the screen, because in it, there is a story of betrayal and revolt like you have never seen before.